Hey ladies, gents, and friends of the Chaos Galaxy competitive community. Today I'm coming at you with a Starvation-Tempo deck profile that just won me €100 in the most recent tournament. It was a great event, had a lot of fun, and this particularly meant a lot to me. Oh, that sounds a bit emotional. But it's a classic deck. It's one that the idea I didn't necessarily come up with. I think it came from PDF TCG back in um maybe 2018, 2019, and it had a lot of success in set two. And I've sort of rebuilt it with modern cards, and I think it's really good. So we're going to get stuck into that today. I think it's the best deck in the format right now. Super easy to pick up and a lot of options when playing the deck, which I'll talk about now. So this is the deck. You can just feel free to copy it in the description. I'm going to talk about it in more detail. But if you just want to pause, have a look, see if it's your vibes, to see if you connect with it, and then we can move on from there. So these are the strengths and weaknesses of the deck. There's a lot. The deck has a toolbox with like five different options that you can play towards. You have your starvation things, you have your blue flames things, and you have like a Sheos tempo package. So you can do a lot of different things, and a card Forces of Justice. It lets you pick up any like 4-star or lower creature. So there's lots of options with that, which sort of links with our next thing, playstyle flexibility, right? You have so many different strategies that you can go with if you need to lean into the blue flame package, if you need to lean into the starvation thing, which is just taking stars from the opponent, then you can do that. That connects with zone control with our Guster, and it's also a bit of zone control for us. We've got Zammer Zead and Zomatle, which can be brought back with the Forces of Justice. We have a lot of burst damage that comes from Time Flash Portal, Pelfam, and the Blue Flame package. We got high pressure low end, so that's the Sheos tempo things. That's a bunch of 4-star and lower creatures that all hit for 2 or more points. And so you can play them each turn, like back to back to back. Like every turn, you've got free place two to get 2 creature boards. So like Fraxle's essentially free, Magsprout's free, Obsidiblob costs 1 star, it's free. So you're going to be getting these 2 creature boards out every turn that, if left unchecked, they're going to be hitting the opponent for like 4 or 5 points. So that's the high pressure low end, and you've got high burst potential. The tower with Jakrah can hit for 5 with his Zomatle, plus like a Pelfam or Sheosian, you can hit really high. You've got a consistent draw engine, which comes from the planet Sheos, and cards like Scoria Carrier, Thorngabork, which can also be brought back with Forces of Justice, so you've really got a lot of options there to draw. And you've got infinite late game damage, so the Jakrah and tower combo is infinite. So if the opponent's playing a slower deck, that's okay, you can slow down, we can do that playstyle flexibility we had, and we can just drop like 4 or 5 towers, and we're going to be able to win the game with that. And then only one attachment just plays around Kaleidoscope Warriors, which is pretty good. There are some weaknesses which some can be exploited, some can't, some better than others. So we got a lack of true removal. Our main removal card is Pelfam, just bounces to hand. Time Flash Portal comes back the following turn, and Jakrah comes back like eventually in the deck, so we'll have to deal with it eventually. So that basically means when we play our removal, we want to apply pressure, which we can easily since it's a tempo deck, right? It just means if you're trying to out resource the opponent, you're not going to have too much of a good time since they will keep on getting their cards back. So we are looking to put the opponent on a clock. We've also got a lack of high power creatures, which in combination with the lack of true removal can be problematic if we're going against a slower deck with a lot of big creatures like Polysim, for example. We need Zomatle. We really do. Zomatle's really important. You get it back off Forces of Justice if you need to, which is why the deck's good because of that flexibility again. But yeah, we got so many 4-star creatures, and then our big creatures are Jakrah and Pelfam. Pelfam's more of a bounce than an attacking threat, so it's really just Jakrah, which means we can't kill anything with more than 370 health, which is like a bunch. Like we can't even kill Ozos. So we really need Zomatle, and we can't search Zomatle. So it really is a weakness of the deck that it can't kill like a turn one Ozo. We're gonna struggle to kill unless we've got Zomatle. We got no board protection, no temple traps, the Leviathan Crown, Warpole Jetpack, none of those activators, and no damage control, which basically just means Orbov and Paju Pajuru, but mainly Orbov. We don't play any of that in our deck, which means we're vulnerable to burst damage. So that's another weakness that can be exploited if we come across a burstier deck. And we cannot search Jakrah. You'll see other variations are going to play things like Lost Probe in Rainbow packages. They're going to play Universe Boundary. We don't play any of that, but later on I'm going to talk about how you can maybe implement some of those into the deck. But we're really focused on being a Starvation deck, not a Blue Flame deck. You see Blue Flame decks in the past, they'd play a Temp Floaty, they'd play 2 offerings to Eos, they'd play a second copy of Laji. We don't play any of those. We cut the package from 8, which was more of focused around that, to 4, where it's more of a side mission in the deck. So they're the strengths and weaknesses. Our planet's Sheos, you can give it a quick read. Basically, every 3 Sheos creatures that die by an attack or card ability, we draw a card. So that's going to give us a consistent draw engine. And losing Moletown to the ban list doesn't actually hit the draw potential of the deck as much as people think. Obviously, if you open 2, even opening 1, it creates a lot of draw. But if you look at our deck earlier, I think we're playing about like 14 to 16 Sheos creatures, I want to guess. Like, we're going to be drawing a bunch of cards regardless. And Sheos is the main factor of that, not Moletown, so don't get it confused. We're still drawing a lot of cards. So these are the tempo tools. First off, we got Pelfam. Some would call it a staple. I don't think it's a staple anymore. The game requires. There's a lot of other good boss creatures, first of all, so you can't just put Pelfam in your deck for a boss creature. And the game requires your stars to be spent a little bit more carefully. So Pelfam's a tempo tool where by playing it to put something in their hand, forcing them to drop more stars to play it back. And while we're doing that, we're applying pressure, right? Because it's removal on a body. That's probably the best archetype of card in Chaos Galaxy, removal on a body, right? That's going to be the best tempo tool. Next, we got Fraxle. So it's essentially a free creature. It rarely gets removal spent on it. Although that is something that I think people will play towards more using removal on Fraxle. Since we play a very small deck, they don't need to save it. And so yeah, when it dies by an attack, gain 4 stars. So it's essentially a free 260. That's going to be one of our great tempo attackers, getting us 2 points, then getting out the next turn and being free. The next card's free as well when you cosplay a 6-star Sheos creature, which is any Sheos creature in our deck. You get to free play it, similar enough stats to Fraxle, just a bit tankier. And yeah, it's a bit more reliable for that star economy too. And we play a bunch of Sheos creatures in our deck. Like I said before, it's going to be coming down a bunch. No consistency issues with this whatsoever. Next, we got Scoria Carrier, probably like a huge potential card if they can't deal with it. 160 health is surprisingly tanky. It forces a lot of trades. Think FaceTime, Zammer Zead, Flacadorus, North. I could probably keep on going. Scorns. There's a bunch of 160 power creatures, and there's actually not too much between that 160 and 250 range, which means you're going to be forcing people to play things like Darkspark a lot and forcing more stars to kill Scoria Carrier, or you can force out removal so that your Fraxles get their effect off. It's a great card, especially paired with Planetary Field to protect it. Because if you have another creature, Sheos creature, again we've established a lot of those, so it will go off consistently, and you just draw a card, and it's essentially like covered its card cost in one, whereas these other 2 cards have covered their star cost in one. Next, Sheosian Lava Mole. Great toolbox card we can bring back with Forces of Justice when it attacks and kills. Remove an activator from the opponent's hand. So most of the time you don't use it with Forces of Justice, but if you're going against a deck with a lot of activators, obviously bring this back. It's going to be hitting a lot. It's going to be great. It's essentially a +1 because when it kills something that cancels it out, and then it can also kill something from your hand, or it dies and you get hand knowledge, which is great for knowing how bursty we want to be, knowing how much our orbits and gusters affect them as well. Zammer Zead, our next card, you play it to get a zone to your planet. Now, this is the best deck in the game, I'm going to go ahead and say, at getting 3 creature zones and 3 battle zones, that iconic 3-3-1 setup, because Zammer Zead and Zomatle both get extra zones, and they can both be brought back with Forces of Justice, so it's almost like a Fraxle and Magsprout. You use it to get that second zone, and it's essentially a free creature, or a +1 actually, because it's 3 stars. And if you use it to get that third creature in battle zone, that's for the matchups where you don't have a lot of openings against the opponent, where they have strong boards. Think Pelissient. So each time you open the board, you want it to be with a lot of value points. So think maybe your Henna matchups, Pelissient matchups, Xemius matchups, and there was one more in my head. Omnius. Alright, against those you can go into a 3 creature battle creature zone setup, and then you can use that to get extra damage on your limited removal. The same thing with Zomatle, right? Getting that extra zone. One thing I'd say is save Zomatle for when you need it. It's tempting to just play it to get an extra point early. This is when you need to read the matchup. If you know you have a lot of things where you need that Zomatle to up and kill something. So like against a deck that's playing like Farkadorus, Darkspark, Super Flooper, we'll be able to play Zomatle to get us Fraxles, Magsprouts, Sheosian Lava Moles, Lajis, killing all those things. So we'll hold it for that. If we've got a Jakrah in hand against Pelissient, we'll hold it so Jakrah can kill all their cards in their deck. Just have a good matchup knowledge there and don't just play it immediately, alright? We want to save it if we can. Obsidiblob's a 1 star essentially free at that point, just 100 power, so we get to uptrade into a lot. It's a lot of creatures that cost more than 1 star. even more than like 3 and 4 stars that have less than 100 power. So we just drop Obsidiblob. Similar thing with Thorngabork. Oh, Obsidiblob with Zomatle's great too, just hitting for 2 points. 200 power uptrades into so much more, it's ridiculous. Thorngabork, similar to Obsidiblob, essentially free at that point, right? And at 60 power, probably doesn't kill as much. It's mainly used to kill like 1 and 2 stars. Like if we're looking to make a good tempo play with Pelfam, like a Pelfam plus Thorngabork curves out nicely for 8 stars. So that's like 2 turns after an orbit reset or something. And then we get that nice tempo play, swing for 3 points. Thorngabork's just getting in there to clear their creature on the board and getting in with the Pelfam, which means the opponent can't really feel safe by just dumping their own small creature just to protect their board, right? Oh, I haven't been tapping along. Oh no. Zomatle. Pause and read that. Pause and read Thorngabork too. Apparently there's no Obsidiblob. If we can get an F in the comments for Obsidiblob. And then Time Flash Portal lastly. So this is another great tempo card. I want you to think of this scenario, because I don't see enough people do it. Alright. We play 2 creatures. They have 2 creatures. Okay? 2 creatures going against each other. We play Time Flash Portal on one of their creatures, so that with our 2 creatures, one of them attacks face. Alright? And we get like, 3, 4 points, whatever it is. On their turn, now they've got 0, and they've got 1 coming back. So if that creature doesn't come back, Time Flash Portal is just a straight up kill 1-stone creature. So that's very good, alright? And that's got plenty of value, we're happy with that. If they play 2 creatures to respond to our 2 creature board and go like that, then their creature from Time Flash Portal doesn't come back, and that's the scenario we're talking about, okay? So then they play 1 creature, right? That's the other option. They just kill 1. Now, let's not use that finger. Now one of their creatures is free. Oh, one of our creatures is free, sorry. If we've played it, we play creatures expecting them to last 1 turn. Any more turns is a bonus. So I'm just going to run that through real quick. Obviously, removal does come into play here, but this is a very good scenario. So you got 2 creatures, they got 2 creatures. You Time Flash Portal 1, you swing, you get in for points, right? 1 hits their planet. On their turn, they can play 1 creature and attack, and they get their creature back, and now one of your creatures got value. Or they can play 2, kill your 2, and now Time Flash Portal is just an insanely strong card. So I just want you to think about that scenario. That's a very good tempo play, gains you momentum and points, and don't knock my laptop over. Alright. So this is the Starvation package. This is like the main thing of the deck. I feel bad running 1 orbit, but I think 1's a bit better than 2. I think the main Starvation card here is Guster for sure. It's essentially another free creature, but works in a different way because you remove a zone from their planet. So rather than gaining 4 stars, you're taking away 4 from the opponent. Another great tempo play because if you're like both on 0, you got that 2 creature setup, pop up battle zone. On their turn, they probably can't afford 2 creatures and a battle zone, so they probably can't deal with your 2 creature board, and you get that momentum swing, right? You compare it with Time Flash Portal. Time Flash Portal, the creature, Guster, the creature zone. Now that creature can't come back. This is one of our guaranteed removals, which we have very limited options of. So against like a Polysium deck, Chaos Beasts, that's going to be very important to play for. Just hold off on your Gusters for that. Orbit is hard to explain when it should be played. It opens up a lot of lethals. First of all, I'm going to I'm going to preface that, okay? The opponent will look at your star count and they'll be like, okay, they're on 4 stars, gain 4 for turn. Am I safe if they're on 8 stars? Yeah, I am. Okay, good. But then you will use 8 stars, you'll play Orbit, get their stars, and now you're on like 13 for the turn or something, and the opponent's like, oh, silly me, they did have lethal. So that's one thing. Against Polysium, you don't really want that deck getting 2 creature boards, so you use your Gusters, your Orbits to just keep the game low, right? Keep the game low, keep both players playing with 0 stars at the start of the turn. Ideally, that only affects 2 Pelfams and 2 Jakrahs for you. If you time your Orbit well, your Jakrahs and Pelfams are going to come down the turns you orbit, so you're not affected after. Every other card in your deck can be played in the following turns from 0. You got Magsprouts, Fraxles to recover, Forces Justice to get them to recover, Obsidiblob, Thorngaborks to recover. Alright, you can recover better than most decks. But yeah, Orbit, it's really hard to explain when to use it. If the opponent is just saving stars, obviously you use it, but there are some just tempo plays you make where you're only stealing 3 to 5 stars, which isn't much, and you're even giving them stars in some spots, but it's just knowing those certain stat lines in decks. So if you know the hand where Pelfam plus or a Facel sign or something plus a creature really impacts you, then drop an orbit. And rather than one player being on medium stars and you on low, just bring both players to low stars. Forces of Justice is a great toolbox card. I've got a list of cards here can bring back. Can bring back a lot, and I don't want to forget anything. So, Guster's the main one. Guster is going to annoy a lot of opponents, make a lot of opponents rage quit. There's no order here. After like Guster's the main one. After that, there's not really an order. Scoria Carrier draws a card. Laji can search Tower if it got negated or killed before you got to use it. Mole, scan for activators. Zammer Zead in case you get Guster yourself or to extend into that 3/3 board. Magsprout for a free creature. Thorngabork to get star economy back, and then Fraxle and Obsidiblob, I believe your other cards can be used for similar reasons. And I forgot if I mentioned Zomatle, so Zomatle too. There's like a bunch of targets. I've probably used it on all of them too. It's not some gimmick I say, like it can target everything, but you don't. I've used it on everything, I reckon, and I've played about 20 games with the decks. That's pretty reasonable, if you ask me. Um, just another thing, Guster and Forces of Justice, remember, we can pop a resource zone so they can't play activators and swing in for lethal, because most players just have one resource zone up. So that's like the main things, right? We got the starvation. When we're eating at their stars, we're playing those tempo cards, those pressure cards, and that's how we're getting our damage. On top of that, things go sideways, and just to cover a bit more, we got the Blue Flames package, so this takes us to the late game. We said it can go infinite. Jakrah covers higher power, and that's really about it. Oh, and removal too, make those tempo plays and getting for points. There's not too much to talk about here. We're not a Blue Flames deck. Don't get it confused. We just play the Blue Flames cards. We are a Starvation deck. This is not our main appeal. Yes, some games you open tower and Jakrah, and then you draw a second tower, and then you search it with Laji. Yeah, that happens. This gives the deck a very high ceiling, which is why I think it's one of the best decks too. It's got very good, like high roll potential whilst having a low floor. So these are the staples. Not too much to talk about. I think Sheosian should get a special mention since it's a better Pelfam. It's a really good tempo card. Like you steal that big creature, like something with more than 4 stars, right? More than 4 stars, since that's how much you gain a turn. You drop your orbit, set them to 0. Now they can't buy back with Sheosian. Right? That's great, simple play. You can do weird math things with Sheosian plus Pelfam bounce for Sheosian, so you can Sheosian the next turn too. But it's just a great tempo card. Pair it alongside any attacker, and it's a removal and a body in one, right? We're getting a creature, we're removing a creature, so we're doing that body plus creature thing again, removal plus body thing, and it's great. Tech options, so that was 33 cards I went through, leaving us with 1 slot left. It's technically a starvation card. When the opponent free plays a creature, you kill it with 4 more stars. Sorry, a creature with 4 more stars, you kill it. So against Polysium, most tomb targets. Against Sindel Tempo, you'll be hitting Skelly Queens. It's just sort of mid against everything, and then slightly above average or good. I'll just say good against Polysium. So that's awkward to play. You could probably play a second Orbit or some of the cards I mentioned in a sec. Just a Relhex Mine to fill out the slots is good, or chuck a sideboard card in the main that is generic too. But Erratic Void, I think, just thematically goes nicely with the Starvation theme, so it's in here. These are other valid cards. There's obviously more than just 4, right? I've already mentioned a couple, but these are the main ones that I've considered. So Orbate Soldier, if the 250 power becomes relevant, I can't think of too much right now. Maybe like Planet Racer, like if a Tekla deck pops up, obviously it's good with Zomatle against like a Kazarax deck. I'm sure there's a bunch of things that fall within that like 250 to 350 range with Zomatle that this can kill. Universe Boundary kills our Jakrah consistently, but it goes -1. And since we're not a Blue Flames deck, I don't think we need this. If we were on like Temp Floaty and all that stuff, yeah, probably play Universe Boundary. You can pivot into a deck built slightly more that way. Feel free to. I don't have any like moral thing against it, but I just prefer playing a Starvation deck to focus on that Starvation theme. With Crimson Grenade and Fireball, they both work well in this deck. I'd recommend Crimson Grenade at 1 copy, Fireball at 1. Oh, I'd recommend all these at 1 copy, but the only ones that can go to 2 is Fireball, and I don't think it'd look out of place. I think Crimson Grenade's a bit too inconsistent to play at 2, but very high impact card, and it's one of those things where it's one of the few cards that has an impact without having to draw it, because it can change the way the opponent attacks you, which will potentially give you an advantage. You can get carried away by playing Crimson Grenade with Orbed Commander. And that will be very good against Polysium and big decks, maybe Xemius as well, it'll be good against. So if they pop into the meta, consider that. but then you probably should just build a more Sheos mid-range focus deck. And same with Firewall, you can play Behemoth, that's going to be good against Polysium. It's going to be less good against Xenius, I'd say. Yeah, probably just commit to a Sheos mid-range deck at that point, which I highly recommend too. I think those are both great deck options, Crimson and Sheos mid-range. So yeah, that's the deck. It's going to be in the description. Feel free to copy it. What I would recommend you do now, since it's the best deck in format, I would recommend you just play a couple games, like one or two here, there. Just shuffle some starting hands. And then I would play just like this exact deck. Then I would make your touches to it, right? We've never seen a deck that's been perfect day one. And this is like I guess it's like a day two list because it's the second event that it's been in. But decks always get changed, right? You can add your own little spin on it, your own little touch. I think the most accurate decks we've had to their original build have been APC, which we saw get a Blue-Flame package added. Well, I guess that was new card drops, that doesn't count. We also saw like a solo aggro get a Sheosian Lava Mole added. So yeah, there's going to be changes to this deck. I'm already looking at Erratic Void as a card to change. The orbit ratios I'm not too sure about. Zammer Zead looks good, but it can be changed. It's not a part of the Sheos things. I think Pelfam is something to look into to change for sure. But yeah, probably the most well-rounded deck right now. I think it covers everything really well. So I definitely have a crack with it, and that's my Starvation deck profile.